Welcome to La Mesa, the City of San Antonio's podcast. We are the Mayor's Commission on the Status of Women, and I am Melanie Mendez-Gonzales, Commissioner for District 1. Today, we have Vanessa Martinez, the Chair of the Commission. Welcome, Vanessa.
Hi, Melanie.
And Dr. Gwen Godlock, Vice Chair of the Commission. Welcome, Dr. Gwen.
Thank you.
And Adriana Pecina-Rios, Associate Commission. Welcome. Hi, Melanie. Great. So today we're going to cover a variety of topics, and we're just going to jump right into the questions. How has your career shaped the lens through which you see women's issues in San Antonio? Vanessa?
Well, I have been in HR and people strategy for about 20 years, and as somebody who has done the work in San Antonio, it's been interesting to see the need, right? And so the need for equity and the need for inclusion. As I was working in HR, I also decided to become a DEI certified specialist, and I started trying to figure out how I could weave those in. Around the same time, there were some changes in healthcare access that made me want to be a bit of an activist. And so I started working with Planned Parenthood, and I started looking into social justice and reproductive rights. So it was part of my equity work that I was doing in the office, but it was also a lot of advocacy work that I was doing with Planned Parenthood and for reproductive rights that brought me to the commission so that I could go ahead and try to make a bit of a difference.
Well, we're so glad it brought you here. Dr. Gwen?
Sure. I am a retired Army Nurse Corps officer, and so after serving 27 and a half years in the military, I've seen just women's issues from both a military perspective as well as a civilian. Moving here in 2007 and integrating myself into the San Antonio culture, I, like Vanessa had stated, there are a lot of things that I think we collectively can tackle together in terms of women's issues. And I look forward to implementing those things that I've learned over my career into this program.
We appreciate you so much, Dr. Gwen.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And Adriana?
Yeah, I've worn different hats in my career. One of the first jobs that I had, I was a juvenile probation officer. And then I continued working with children here in San Antonio. And one of the things that always came down was women's issues are also children's issues. When our women in our city are struggling to make ends meet, to put food on the table, our children are also struggling. Our children are struggling in education. Our children began struggling in the community. And so when I started seeing that intersection of need, I really wanted to ensure that we start at the bottom. How can we help? How can we help just have our children have fundamental things at home?
Mm-hmm.
And where can we start doing that with specifically with uplifting our women here in San Antonio and uplifting them to be the great providers that we are. And as we know, a lot of our single female households in the city are at high risk of poverty. And so when I found those statistics and we started really living and helping families through that, I saw it firsthand and really wanted to see how I can help and how I can make a difference for our San Antonio community.
I love it. Thank you, Adriana. I also appreciate that at this table, and we have other fellow associate commissioners, there's already a diverse background of experience. So my next question is, what brought you to the Mayor's Commission on the Status of Women? Was there a significant moment or a specific moment or experience that drew you into this work? We'll start with you, Dr. Gwen.
Sure. I'm going to reference Luke in that to whom much is given, much is required. And I understand that there may be some things that I haven't experienced from a hardship perspective that my colleague just spoke about. But how can I employ those tasks or those experiences by helping other people? I myself was a single parent, so I understand the toll that takes not only on you, but family who aspire to help. But then I think about a lot of single parents that may not have family or may have family that's struggling too. So understanding the work of this commission, doing research, I thought what better way that I could give back than to join a force of women who are looking forward to leading the next charge and leading the women that need our help in this community. So I'm all here for that.
Believe it. Vanessa?
So as I grew in my career, I thought about the fact that I was a teen mom. Then I became a single mom, and I was skills-based hire. So I was somebody that did not get to graduate from college. I had to go into the workforce and build myself from, a very bottom role to get to where I am. And so in thinking that, I wanted to be able to be on the commission to serve for those, because you have to be able to see it to know you can do it. And so that's where mine came from. And then for my children to see it as well.
I love it. You recognize representation is important.
It is.
Yeah. Adriana?
For me, so after my time with as a juvenile probation officer, I then moved into the city, and I was working on increasing attendance at a specific SAISD school. And that was interesting work in the sense that it really wasn't about attendance, right? Children want to go to school. Children, especially elementary school children, they like getting out. They like going to go see their friends at school. They like learning. They crave that. But it was really about if they had everything that they needed to just get out of bed and go to school. And so it was during that time that I found that a lot of women are doing their very best to get their children to school in the morning, but they may not have the safety, the security. They may not trust in the security in their community. They may not have the community around them or the support system to help them. Some things that we take for granted is if my son needs socks, I can go and provide him some socks. And that's not the case for a lot of women and a lot of families in San Antonio. And so when handing out, jackets, handing out socks, handing out those things, the light bulb moment really did hit of we need to ensure that our women in San Antonio feel safe, secure, have the things that they need, not just for themselves, but for their children and for the next generation of really wonderful and powerful individuals that we're hoping to create in this city.
You said that's not the case for a lot of families in San Antonio, and I think that's what brings all of us to literally the table and to the commission as well. So thank you for sharing those personal insights to how we got to the commission.
I would love to take a minute and ask the host how you came to the commission, because you are also on our commission. You deserve a moment as well.
Thank you, Vanessa. So I am an entrepreneur. And my entrepreneur journey started when I was a stay-at-home and a homeschool mom. And so I did see a lot of different families with different backgrounds. It's really how I got to know the city from other people's families. And it's always been, staying home with my own kids and homeschooling them. Obviously, it was like children. So I really resonate with what you say about we have to take care of the women because they take care of the kids. And then I saw that in other families and just saw how different it was. And then that led to my entrepreneurial journey of being a digital media storyteller and continuing to learn and hear about more stories, and just naturally gravitated to women's stories. And so I wanted to be on the commission for a lot of the reasons that you all express, but it's like every family has a different story, a different journey in San Antonio. And when this commission was established, which we'll talk about, the purpose and whatnot, it just felt like a place that I could use my skills and talents to give back, like hosting this episode of the podcast. So thank you, Vanessa. Thank you for including me on that. So let's talk about the commission because I am a new commissioner. I've been here less than a year. Adriana, you recently joined as an associate commission.
Yes.
Dr. Quinn, remind me how long?
Probably less than 6 months.
Yeah, you're about the same. Fine.
Yeah.
Okay. With the new elections, came a new cycle for most.
Yeah. So Vanessa, will you share with us, give the listeners an idea and an accessible picture of what the commission is, what it does, and most importantly, why it matters?
Yeah. I started back in 2017, or when I joined the commission in 2017. We were essentially running one event. It was an International Women's Day event, and we were collecting funds for scholarships. That ran essentially through 2018, 2019, and we had about $80,000 in funds from these scholarship luncheons that we had at that point. After that, we moved over to a new chair where we then started working on community-led events, and so we held community events that were throughout different areas. So one was central. There were a couple that were on the south side and the east side, where we would have several hundred community participants come in and we would have fairs for them. Also with some medical, so, we gave them some health testing, some free access to care. We also gave them breakfast, lunch. We gave them sessions to hear. And then they were able to shape how they learned about the community at those events. We have moved over to working with the data that we're using in the Status of Women and Status of Girls reports. And so what we have now done is we've decided to figure out what we need to do with that data as a city to move the needle forward for women. And so the goal this year for the women on the commission is to work on 2 events. We want to work on potentially a health fair for our city for women, and we also want to work with our children during Day of the Girl with the Girl Scouts while we collect data for a 2026 combined Status of Women and Girls report. Those reports were held separately prior, but we'd like to make sure that they are held together, and we're able to use that data to figure out, what can we help on the commission, or who can we work with in the city to create some movement so that we can improve those numbers.
Yeah, data is so important. Yeah.
It's been quite a while since the last report. Vanessa, can you remind me? I think it was
2018.
Well, 2018.
Yeah, so we had a 2018 or a 2019 Status of Women report. And so the goal is now that we hold them and we run a report every so often. And that's what we're trying to initiate and try to accomplish with the Status of Women now, or the commission.
Right.
We're trying to ensure that we are able to every 5 years run a report and see if there's been anything changed. One of the things that we did find as we have been asking for a new report is in some of the current data that we could pull, there have been no changes except for one. And that one data point that's changed is that there are more women that are obtaining college degrees than prior. So we are gaining more degrees in San Antonio. We are moving up. But that did not change the income that we make when we gain a college degree. So we still have some work to do. We are going out there. We are doing the work. We are getting those degrees. We need our employers to pay us for the work that we do.
Absolutely. Did you want to add anything?
No, the only thing that I wanted to add is to Vanessa's point is just to emphasize the importance of data, current data. The current report is dated 2018 to 2019, but COVID happened right after that report was published, and the world changed. A lot of things changed. Households changed. Women's roles in the household changed, and impact on kids and their learning, because we know a lot of kids were learning from home. So I'm really, I'm hoping as well that we are able to initiate a new report to check the status, so then we can build a platform on where to go next.
Right. Adriana, do you want to add?
It's so very important. That is so very important, not just for the right and justification of saying why we need this commission and why we should do these things for women, not just because we should, but hopefully we, will have the data to support our movement through the commission. But it also helps us really see and look at how we're doing in the city of San Antonio. I think women with or without families are a good gauge of how is the community. How our society treats women is a good tell sign of how we're doing as a community and how we're supporting one another and how we're building the community moving forward.
So, at the beginning of this, we all talked about why we joined the commission, right? And we know that report's from 2018. And one of the reasons we wanted to do the podcast was to reach more people in San Antonio. So let's think about the person who is hearing about the commission for the very first time. What is the mayor's commission on the status of women, and what does it do for San Antonio? Does anyone want to do you want to? I would love for you.
Sure. I will say for me, even as an active listener, and I also participate on this commission and work alongside of a bunch of a group of female leaders who are in their own right fabulous. If this is your first time hearing, I'm glad you brought up that question, because they need to know there is a commission set aside for women's and children in their issues, that we are here to advocate for you and to be the voice, if I should say. And I know all of us are vocal because I've sat in meetings with my peers for several meetings. But also just to know that if you have concerns, each district has a representative. In addition to being the vice chair, I'm the representative for District 8. And so I know Vanessa and her team is working on building the website, which is also going to be an avenue for you to reach out and know who your district rep is, as well as formulating or updating the Facebook, because we know social media is very heavily. But in short, we're here to support the women of San Antonio and children, move the needle for equal rights, equal pay, food, shelter, and any of those necessary things you need in order to maintain a stable and mental way of life.
I do want to remind everyone that is listening that Dr. Gwen is also a veteran. So she is our veteran voice on the commission. And so we are fully as diverse. We have Commissioner Fernanda Cardenas, who works with senior citizens. We have Associate Commissioner Yu and others that work with children. And so this commission runs and supports so many different types of women with so many different needs and so many different intersectionalities. So there is one of us here that can answer or find you an answer to any question that you may have. But I really wanted to shout you out for being a veteran and remind everyone that we also have a veteran commissioner that is on our commission that is here to serve and here to talk to you.
Yeah, well, that actually leads into the next question is, who does the commission serve?
Oh.
And how does that, yes, it's perfect. And how does it show up for women and girls in our community?
Yeah. I think like everything else, for me, it's not having things happen to us, but actually have a woman's voice that is from, very different. As Vanessa shared, we're all very different in our community. We're all different leaders. We're all different types of women sitting at our commission. And it's wonderful to have a voice in the change and a voice in advocating for the change instead of just having things happen to us. It can be very debilitating and very just very saddening to feel like things are happening to us. The city council may be making some decisions, and it may feel that things are not happening with women at center or women at mine. And really, I hope that this commission brings that hope for San Antonio women, that we are keeping women centered. We are keeping women voices in our hearts and in our minds as we make some decisions through the commission, and we continue to advise through some of these decisions that are going to impact our community.
And we have been partnering, as I discussed, we have been partnering with community voices that are important. And so Day of the Girl is critical. So for me, when I think of Day of the Girl, I think of being able to support young women as they are moving up into leadership and working with the Girl Scouts directly. And then we have International Women's Day events. We did not have one this year because we wanted to focus on data, but we do hope to continue with International Women's Day events in the future to celebrate and support the women in the community. And along with that, we want to utilize the data to figure out how we can support initiatives that bring women to an equitable space. Most of the Status of Women and Status of Girls reports talked about how there are so many barriers to access. And so how can we support removing those barriers? You know, kind of like you're talking, we always feel like there's some barrier that's hindering us. How can we help remove some of those barriers? And if we cannot help remove them, how can we remind you that they're still there so that you don't forget that it's still work that has to be done? And so that's where the data comes in for me. It's like, this is a constant reminder that we still have work to do, and we need to continue the work in some way every year as a commission and as a city.
No, I appreciate that. And it makes me, when I reflect on that question, like, who do we serve? Yes, women and girls in San Antonio, right? But I also think because of the data and because we're commissioners represented by each district is represented by a commissioner, it's also everyone else who is in this community with the women and girls. I think about maybe a male business owner who understands that maybe they're listening, they're like, okay, and now they have a place to go and find that data and that research. Because if they're employing women or if they're educating girls, they should know these data points as well.
Right.
Vanessa, and sorry, Melanie, but let us not forget, we are one of the major metropolitan areas in the country. San Antonio is growing and fast growing. And so the data is so very important when we start thinking about our larger impact across the nation, that some smaller cities, some smaller towns may be looking at what is our larger sister cities, what is our larger communities doing, and how are they handling these things and these issues that rise up.
So even reaching beyond San Antonio, that's a really good note, Adriana.
I do think that that's a good thing to bring up and also remind everyone that we're at the time of the last report, so 2018, 2019, the city was 51% majority women. And so then we were also in demographics, majority Latina. So this is a very, diverse female-led city. And so thinking about it from that aspect, when we talk and we hear you, we're not just talking about the women, we are talking about the majority of the city that has an impact on the other 49%, right? And our children are important, and we're responsible for taking care of them. So all of these things filter in through the women, especially in in a population that is majority women.
And one thing I'd like to pile on is veterans. Female veterans in the city is growing exponentially. So that report would also hopefully capture those veterans and how can we further collaborate with the VA and VA services in the community or in the county to help facilitate those needs that may not have been addressed due to whatever reason, whether it's manpower, resources, but also looking at the growth of female veterans in this community. That report or new data would reflect a population that may not have been captured in 2018.
That's a great point. Yes. Let's look at the role set we're serving in. So Vanessa, with you as the chair, what does your role look like and what drives your commitment after 8 years?
So my role is much more working within the city office, right? So we work with and this is going to be tough for me, compliance, opportunity, and access department who have been amazing with us, but working with them on asking if there are initiatives that we need to support, anything that we can use from the city, and then gathering data from every commissioner and every associate commissioner on items that need to go to agenda. Then all I do is essentially facilitate a meeting, but I do stay because the work is important to me. And to me, that data has not changed in the time that I have been on the commission. So I'm not going anywhere until we see some change. I got to see one number change. If I see one number change, then yeah, I'm out of here. But right now, I have yet to see a number change in a positive direction, except for the degrees. Amazing. But let's get paid for those degrees, ladies. We deserve it. So yeah, that's right.
Gwen, what about vice chair?
Well, first, I'm going to give kudos to Vanessa for staying in this race for 8 years and continuing to take the reins. She does more than facilitate meetings, juggling a lot, as all of us are. But my role is more so to assist, of course, Vanessa, and move the needle forward. The other thing I would like to bring to this position is relationships, collaborative relationships in the community. I will say I'm a new member of the San Antonio Alumni Delta Sigma Theta chapter. And so that is a whole nother group of powerhouse of women in itself. So the things that I'm learning as a new member, what can I also bring to this table in support and services? So more so like a chief of staff, how do we manage and how do we juggle? And I do appreciate the openness that I'm allowed to have in order to infuse those resources.
I love it. I've only been here 6 months. I can't wait to see the kind of. Adriana, your role is a fairly new role, not just you being in it, but the whole role in itself. And so what surprised you most about joining as an associate commissioner, and what has inspired you to keep showing up?
Yeah, first I want to give kudos to the City of San Antonio for creating associate commissioners in this very important commission. It not only assists in ensuring that we have more voices in the room, but also really bringing up the next set of women that are going to hopefully sit on the commission as well. And so while I am not a voting member of the commission, as an associate commissioner, I really see my role as continuing to lend a voice and continuing to listen, hear, and see how else we can shape and continue to shape the commission moving forward. Vanessa's 8 years, thank you so much for your service of 8 years. And also we understand that that's a lot to put on a woman, and that's a lot to put on to one person through this. We need to have this shared sense of responsibility for not just the commission, but overall for our community and our women in San Antonio. And sitting at Vanessa's feet for 8 years doesn't feel quite right? Like, we want to ensure that our associate commissioners have the necessary steps and know enough. So if we do decide to sit on the commission, that we are hit the ground running and we have not missed a beat for our districts. I think I answered your question.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, you did. Yeah. So I'll just add that I serve on the executive committee as well, and I want to be as a secretary. And one of the reasons that I volunteered to do that was because I appreciate that the commission is set up in such a structured way. Like, we use Robert Rules of Order, and we have an executive committee. And so it's not like we're just meeting and doing, like, there's a whole process. And in order for that process to work, the roles have to be filled. And when the roles are filled, we can do more work. We're not waiting on something else. And so, to be quite honest, like, am I a great note taker? No, but we have someone who supports with that. And so, but I understood that these roles need to be filled so that we can do the work that is important. And I'm happy. And then I also try to challenge myself to serve where I can. So I'm happy to be here. Yeah, well, thank you. So we're here at La Mesa, right? And so let's explore, why are we doing La Mesa now? Why are we doing it, and why are we doing it now? So what is the purpose of the podcast, and why did we as a commission decide to launch it? Me? Whoever wants to pop in with that, because we've all been a part of the discussion. Yeah.
We firstly, we should thank Kimberly Elliott
Yes.
with Compliance, Opportunity, and Access, who brought the idea to us. So
Thank you, Kimberly.
so Kimberly gave us the opportunity, and what better way for us to try to connect and to try to get some of the information out that may not be so readily available. Like, one of the things about women is that we are running 50, 55 miles an hour, if not 80, 85 miles an hour. And so if we have a podcast to listen to that talks about some of the things that are in notes or in council sessions or that have been reported that are important and that are good takeaways and provide either an opportunity for access or an opportunity to research and get more information and get some help from us, then let's take it, right? And so it's another way for us to try to reach out to women. And that, for me, was what sold me, besides Kimberly giving us the opportunity.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different things when we talk about in the status of women and the status of girls reports. There are health initiatives, there are economic initiatives, there are domestic and intimate partner violence issues that we've got to discuss. And some of those things you do not have time to read, and you don't have time to watch a news show. But if you're driving or if you're taking a ride somewhere and you've got maybe 30 minutes, we're here. So yeah, another way.
What about you, Dr. Quinn? What made you excited about this?
I do believe in raising awareness. Like, how would they know this commission exists? We are overwhelmed a lot sometimes with social media. Like, there's so many platforms, whether you do Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook, but just a formal setting that feels safe for a group of people to come together and talk about the issues uninhibited and unafraid, just to be honest about where we need to go. So this podcast lends to bringing in hopefully future experts on certain issues as the data presents, and also to let the community of the women and children of San Antonio know that they have a group of people that's fighting for them every day.
I love that. Okay, well, you said bring in experts. So, Adriana, I'd like to ask you the next question. You're going to tell people that you're on this podcast, and hopefully they'll ask you, oh, what is this podcast? Who is it for? And personally, I would like to know is who would you like to have at the table with this for future podcasts?
Yeah. So I think that this podcast, is just as Dr. Gwen mentioned, like, it is so we can bring awareness to say that this commission is here and that this is what we do. And this is the issues that we're looking at. This is the issues that we are talking about in our meetings. These are the issues that we're going to look at in our data. As we continue on through experts, I would love to see, and not just for myself as a mom of two, but I would love to see some pediatricians really start discussing how we're discussing women's issues and at what age we're just starting to discuss those women's issues. I was a boy mom for 8 years, and now I have a little girl. And so those things are top of mind for me, is how are we discussing women's issues? Are we discussing them after they start happening to us? Because that's not okay. As many of us,
it feels like that's what happened to us our whole lives.
Yeah, right. Are we discussing those things that happen to our body that are very natural? Are we discussing them after they happen? And how safe are we discussing them? And in what context are we sharing this with our next generation of young girls? On top of that, right, that gives you a good imprint of just relationships. When we start talking about our bodies, when we start talking about how we feel about ourselves, that also starts imprinting our relationships. So I'd love to hear from some pediatricians in the cities, giving us hopefully a view of how we're discussing this with our women and girls, not just in this political climate, but also just in the context of culturally, we all have had our talk as a girl, I'm sure, and how culturally that feels for pediatricians and how we're doing that better for the next generation. I can share personally, I think, my pediatrician and my male pediatrician that was about 80 then, and he is still somehow about 80, did not do a great job. My mom did her very best through running 80 miles an hour and things happening, right? But really, how are we doing that for our next generation of girls that we're now setting them up to feel confident in every next aspect of their life? Right?
Yeah. What about you guys? I'm sorry. See, what about you people? Ideas of who would be the fourth chair here.
I would say that it is for us a time to bring in people that need to be heard. So again, we have a lot of women on this commission that have access to a ton of intelligent guests that have an opportunity for us. I think again of Fernanda. And let's talk about the fact that, in the census, San Antonio is going to be one of the biggest cities that's going to have the biggest generation sandwich gap in the next 10 years, right? And so we're going to need to be discussing how we're watching our children and our parents at the exact same time, and what that looks like for us as we navigate workplaces that are asking us to go back into the office. We're not having the opportunity for hybrid work. How are we handling those situations, right? And who can we bring in that can help discuss ways that we can shape that? Another one is I'm thinking about domestic and intimate partner violence. And there are some amazing programs that go on in other areas that maybe could work here. And so maybe it's bringing people that are not necessarily from here, but also have some experience and some skill set that could be added. And so how can we bring them to the table and talk to people in our area and provide some support? So I'm maybe thinking outside, but
all ideas are great ideas.
They're all ideas. You can throw them all out there. Dr. Gwen.
Yeah, I have maybe one that overarching social action, not so much just from registering to vote by your own means. I don't say that leaning one way or the other, but also getting out and the impact on, voting has on women issues. If you do or don't, whichever way you go, there'll be an outcome. And then also under that umbrella comes education, physical and mental health. So really having experts that talk about caregiver fatigue as a woman, physical health, what are some type of physical exercises or things you can do, get moving without running a marathon or feeling like in your head. And then the mental piece goes without saying. I think we're sponges. We take on more than we think we can until our body shuts down. And then it's like, oh, I should have stopped a week ago.
Right.
So, yeah, social action under overarching, but then physical, mental, and educational health.
So when we think about, all the ideas are on the table, we'll carve this out, we'll communicate what, the next episodes will be. But what do we want the women and girls to feel when they're listening to this, or when they've, once they hit pause or stop?
Empowered.
Empowered.
Yeah, because even if they're taking away with something that they have a question about, or they need more answers, or it's something that is concerning to them, they now have the knowledge to be concerned, right? And they now have the knowledge to ask more questions. Knowledge is power, right? So let's be empowered together. And if there is an idea that somebody else has that they'd like to share with us, as Dr. Gwen mentioned, we have a city page that links to us that Kimberly, our wonderful community compliance, opportunity, and access office person liaison helps us through. So she'd be able to get those messages and let us know what's going on and help us through those, navigate those. Anything that comes through, we can get, and we can look at it and add it to the roster.
I'd love for people to feel like the best feeling is having a wonderful conversation, listening to a wonderful conversation. And when you're looking back on it, feeling like you learned so much without even trying, without even knowing, right? That's the conversation piece. Those are the trinkets that we not just get from our moms, from our abuelas, from our tias, from our, our best friends. I love having a conversation with my girlfriend and getting into some gritty stuff, and then feeling like I walked away from that with a whole new perspective, with learning brand new things. And I wasn't trying to learn new things, right? I just sat down, we had a conversation, and now I'm bombarded by now knowing all these things. And now I have to go research all these new things that I learned, right? That spark of knowledge and that spark of just intrigue that I would love for folks to feel, for women to feel, for men to feel if they listen. And when they listen, I would love for them to feel some form of interest of learning more and learning more about women's issues and why it's so important for society and for a community the size of San Antonio.
I have one more thing.
Yeah.
I want people to hear that they can be on a border commission.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
That they can be a part of the discourse that we are a part of, right? Every community member is important. Every background perspective is important. Every voice counts. And so along your thinkings of the voting and stuff, the one thing that I always think about is, and I always say it when we're talking to parents at the International Day of the Girl, or when we're meeting people in the community at International Day of the Women events, I always tell them, join a border commission, right? Look online, see what's available in your district. And so, yeah, if this makes you want to join a border commission, do it.
Right.
Yeah. I'll write your letter.
Yes, we will support you.
The commission supports you.
It's very there's a common thread, and it's what I was like. This would be my answer. I want people to have more questions.
Yeah.
Right. Like I want them to listen to an episode and have more questions. Whether it be like, how do I get involved, or what do I need to go learn about this? And for people who are not women or girls, like, are the women and girls in my life experiencing this? Yeah, are they support it? What can I do differently? Well, let's talk a little bit about what is actually coming up. The next, we don't want to give everything away, but what can the listeners? Now we've got them. They listened to us this far. So how do we? We want them to come back. So what can they expect to hear from their mayor's commission on the status of women?
I'm gonna let Dr. Gwen go, because you've got so we've got a Dia de los Madres, Mother's Day one coming up, and it's gonna be a little bit later. But I'm gonna let Dr. Gwen.
See, she's putting that.
I'm not putting anything on you.
Well, in addition to what she stated, again, I just want people to understand, like, we are fairly new in coming together as a team. But with that said, there's a lot of ideas on the table, and bringing the girls forward, as well as women events as well.
Yes. So I'm going to tell them your idea.
Yes.
Because it's your idea, so I'm never going to steal. And so we were talking about a Dia de los Madres, Mother's Day podcast, and it will run a little bit later because we are a team of 11 women that have very busy schedules, so we apologize. And now 22 to 33, because we have added the associate commissioners. And so with that, we are very unfortunately busy. And so our next one is on maternal health and talking about maternal morbidity. And so we have in San Antonio one of the highest rates of maternal mortality in the country. And so as a large city, that is a lot to take in. And so we want to talk about that because it does impact communities of color. And so we were talking about that. And yeah, that's our next one. After that, I would love to create that list. We'll get going. But that's next up.
I love that. That's not a topic that you just normally talk about.
No, I think it's important that the topics we do select are meaningful and they're relevant. And when we say women, we're talking all women are impacted by this unfortunate episode of wanting to bring life into the world and could ultimately lose your own. And so when you look at the numbers, yeah, women of color do lead, but that doesn't exclude Latinos. The report that was done in 2018, 2019 also spoke about Asians, also spoke about Caucasians. So who's the expert in San Antonio, and what there could be some things that we don't know that's already in the work that's saving lives. So it won't just be about who's not making it, but what are we doing, or what innovative strategies that can be shared throughout the community on what you can do in order to prevent that as well.
Yeah, we're lucky to have San Antonio Metro Health that has some experts that are working on the issue, and so we'll have them come join us. So that will be great.
That'll be a good, solid conversation with data.
With data. And I mean, there is also, in thinking about that, the fact that, one side of town is where all of our birthing people go to give birth. And so that's really difficult. And so maybe we also open up about access. And so that's the idea.
Yeah. Very much looking forward to the next episode and hearing the experts in Dr. Gwen and the data. But before we close out this episode, I would appreciate if each one of you would share what is one thing you want every woman and girl in San Antonio to know as we close out our very first episode.
I would say one thing is we don't have to have things happen to us. We can activate as little, as big as we want to, as we can allow to be. You can be the support system for your neighbor, or you can run for office and make a large splash, right? There are so many ways that you can impact your community. And I would love for every woman and girl in San Antonio to know that that is possible. Not just possible, but it does not have to look one way. And every story, every perspective matters when we're making decisions for a large group of community.
Dr. Gwen?
I would like to share You Matter. Someone said that to me years ago when I was in a very low place. And so when it's like internal, believe that you matter, then that's really the pedestal from where you will continue to drive. Or thrive. So I just hope that women and girls, we really get sometimes the short of the stick a lot of times, but just know that we've all been there. So you're never alone. And with hopes with this commission, let you know that you have another team that's fighting for you.
Yeah. That's tough. I really honestly did not think of an answer. So for me, it would be that all of us deserve equity. We all deserve to have the same opportunity and access to anything that we want. And so if anybody deserves it, it is every little girl and every little boy that's, out there. And as moms, we all want to give it to them, right? And so my goal is for us to give that access to everybody and hope for the future that we've got a little bit more access for all.
I love that. I think my message would be you're not alone.
Yeah.
And that this commission and this podcast is an example, an attempt to reach out, let you know we're all in it together. So, well, thank you all. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Dr. Gwen. Thank you, Adriana, for not only being here today at the literal Mesa, but also for being a part of the conversation and doing the work as a team on the Mayor's Commission.
Yes,
So
thank you too.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's an honor. It's a special time to get to serve doing this work, but then doing it alongside each one of you. So this is just the beginning of what we know will be powerful conversations for our city, for the women and girls in our city. We will see all of you at the next session, because every woman and girl deserves a seat at the table.